بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا رب الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. حياكم الله جزاكم الله خير. Two quick announcements actually. Maybe not so much for the online folks, but for the local folks. There's two things. Number one, I think it was at the beginning of year 2 or maybe at the end of year 1, there was a Libyan brother who was collecting some money I think it was to buy some prosthetic limbs. I can't remember, subhanAllah, was it prosthetic limbs or was it the wheelchair or something? Wallah, I've forgotten the details anyway. But that brother, his name was Sami, and he used to come quite regularly to this masjid. It's quite built kind of Libyan, and he had a limp, and he used to use a walking stick as well. So I was just told by Sheikh Al-Ghafar that he passed away last week. He used to come to this circle. He hasn't been here for a long time. He moved to Libya. Apparently he had an accident and he was in a coma for 3 months. He's a British citizen, but he stayed there. He stayed there. So he passed away. فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. So that's sad. The second thing is, as you heard the reminder from Sheikh Salim about the situation in Syria and the use of chemical weapons. And actually, to be honest, the chlorine has continuously been used in the last 2 years or 1.5 years since Ghouta when it really came out. But since then they carried on. And you've seen actually that if anyone saw the Jeremy Bowen interview with Bashar al-Assad, then you've seen that he's now as strong as he ever was, and he's very confident, and he's gone back to that kind of thing. So it's very important that, again, just to add my voice to what he said, that the Syrian situation is moving into, I don't know how many years now, 50 or whatever. It's a ridiculous blight on our own personal histories. It's now easily moved into the greatest disaster we'll ever see in our lifetimes, in our generation. So, and his point, Sheikh Salim's point, that there are many concerns of the Ummah, many concerns, and all of them require time and talking about and support. But the Syrian one is something which is above and beyond all forms of comparison. And it is the blessed land, it is the prophetic land, and it is a prophetic fight. This person is Dajjal, and the believers are on the other side. And so it's very, very important that we keep that in mind. And to that effect, I wanted to do a collection for the second half of what Sheikh Salim will be collecting for. You heard what he's collecting for. Sheikh Salim works with a number of charities. He's also the one who set up Syria Relief, or helped set up Syria Relief, which does its own thing. And this one for the education is very important. A lot of us and this is one of the things I'm teaching. I'm relaunching my class in London this Friday, Pure Pesa. A lot of people think that it's just about the fiqh of halal and haram to do with jobs and money and this and that, but also we'll be spending a lot of time discussing is just how poor our understanding of money and charity is. We have a very restricted understanding of charity. So if after describing the horrors of chemical warfare, the next thing to naturally say is that we want money for the children who have been affected, we want money for the food to, and that pulls on the right kind of string on the heart, and people give. And the reason for that is because we are a very emotive people and a superficial people, and also ignorant when it comes to our understanding of sadaqah. It has to be disaster related. It has to be physically, or it has to be very, I don't know what the word is, but has to be, there has to be some kind of graphic nature or some dramatic nature of the appeal. And one of the things which I like about Sheikh Salim, he's my long-time friend, and he is a person I will support for as long as I possibly can, is because he's a visionary and a person who understands the importance of charity in the right place. So, when he's talking about chemical weapons, then he says that we should rethink and rebuild, which is that part of the charity that he's working on, which is to, even in the middle of warfare, to keep focus on education. This is not what the normal mind thinks of. And these are the people who build the future. And it's essential that we show that kind of support. Education for children who will then become people who will then carry on this struggle. People who understand the system, understand the rules and whatever. Education, subhanAllah, is so underrated. That when you look at anyone who works for charities, you'll see that they struggle to get money for work projects, putting women back into work, putting kids back into school, but they're flooded with emergency flour, emergency water, emergency this, because we are a reactive people. Emergency, and we are very, very poor in the proactive part, where we see a problem and then we start to rebuild quickly, investing in people. You can't invest in anything better than people. Investing in people is worth, subhanAllah, so much. So anyway, for those folks here, I will personally be taking those collections, cash collections, this week and next week and the week after, whilst I am still here. For Syria, anyone who wants to send it, then they can send it online. You'll have to get it someone to the masjid, because I'm not going to get involved in any financial transfers or anything like that. Inshallah, we can. I'm very confident that 5,000 of that sum of money that he needs, we can cover just within ourselves easily, inshallah, in the next couple of weeks. Bi'idhnillah. Jazakumullah khair. Okay, so with respect to the text, the good news is, mashallah, that Wadad has come on strong. She's back on the game, which is very important, to be honest. Very important that I know where I am, because I don't have a clue where I am unless I read that statement, this is where you are. That's the best, So anyway, alhamdulillah, I know exactly where we are. We are in the Shaz, let me read out the thing. So we are on the statement that the ghusl is obligated, and we've gone past that, haven't we? No, we haven't. Yeah, okay. And so ghusl is obligated. No, we've done this, haven't we? Yeah, okay. Right. So whoever is obligated to make ghusl is also prohibited from reciting the Quran. Okay? So whoever is obligated to make ghusl is also prohibited from reciting the Quran. They are allowed, though, to pass through the mosque if there is a need, but they cannot remain therein without wudu. That is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be completing this, inshallah, today. Okay? So the point that we got to yesterday, last week, we were talking about, the menstruation and so on and so forth, and we just have one further issue to cover, which is on page 350 of Ash-Sharh Mumti', which is that, what about the non-Muslim? The non-Muslim, he wants to recite Quran. Okay? So this is what we're talking about, yes? He wants to recite Quran. Do we make him the new Muslim? He's non-Muslim, he becomes Muslim and he wants to recite Quran. Now we covered a couple of weeks back whether the new Muslim, he has to make ghusl or not. Remember? Yes? Does the new Muslim need to make ghusl or not? What did we say? Anyone can remember? Excellent. Yeah, you'd look at the situation, you'd kind of weigh up the scenario, and if you're in a masjid and he makes, takes shahada, and we're going to say, okay, and it's prayer time, we'll say as per normal, just make wudu, copy us, and pray, and khalas. You're not going to say to the guy, right, listen, into the tabligh showers, and just, have a quick shower and stuff. That's a mission, man. Yeah, so, but if we're in control of this scenario, he's my friend, I want to go to the mosque and, take shahada and stuff like that, then, if he can make ghusl, and maybe even take shahada with you, which is even better, right? And then take the ghusl and then come in with us, to the masjid, then even better. So if you're in control of the situation, then do so. But if you're not in control and like it's a bit kind of achanak, yeah, a bit kind of, off the whatever it is, yeah, then it's not a problem. So that's what our position was. But let's just carry on and imagine that we didn't cover that before. So it's revisiting the issue again. So according to the madhab, of course, فالكافر ممن يلزمه الغسل فلو أسلم وأراد القراءة منع حتى يغتسل. The position of the madhab is clear. The non-Muslim, when he becomes Muslim, he has to make ghusl. So if he becomes Muslim and he wants to recite, he has to make ghusl anyway. And what's the dalil for that? The dalil is qiyas anil junub. The reason they're going to make this non-Muslim make ghusl is they're making an analogy, analogizing him with someone who is junub. Okay? I don't need to keep translating that word. I can't just keep saying junub and that's it now. Okay? I've said it so many times now. I'm sick to death. I don't think any class has ever had that word used, yeah? Ever. As much as this class. Okay? Don't mind the S word, yeah? And that's how I feel about it now. I'm so sensitive to the whole thing. It's killing me. Right. So that's their evidence, yani, that the junub is a Khan. He has to make wudu before he can recite the Quran. So the new Muslim should as well. Sheikh says, وَهَذَا فِيهِ نَظَرٌ قَوِيٌّ جِدًّا. He goes, man, there's a lot to say about this. Don't know about that. Yeah. He goes, al-ulama, he said, they اتفقوا, أجمعوا. They have consensus that that the junub has to make a ghusl before he can recite. Whereas they differed over whether the new Muslim even has to make ghusl or not. Yani you're comparing like apples and pears basically, or apples and oranges. I don't know what they're comparing these days. Is it apples and pears or apples and oranges? The one guy you've got, he is junub. Every single scholar on the face of the planet basically said that he has to make ghusl before he recites the Quran. As for the new Muslim, major difference of opinion. You saw the Hanbali say that he has to. We ourselves said that he doesn't have to. So I mean, it's clear. For ولا يقاس المختلف فيه على المتفق عليه. He goes, you can't therefore make an analogy between something which is fully agreed upon versus something which there's a difference of opinion over. And he goes, if it is said, فإن قيل نحن نقيس بناء على من يقول بوجوب الغسل على الكافر. He goes, that okay, if someone says, no, we're making qiyas on the assumption, we're making analogy on the assumption that it is obligatory for the non-Muslim, the new Muslim, to basically make ghusl. That's why we're making that analogy. So then, أما من يقول بعدم الوجوب فالأمر ظاهر في عدم منعه من قراءة القرآن. أن حتى على قول من يقول بوجوب الغسل عليه فإنه لا يرى أن وجوبه محتحت. And he goes, okay then, fine. He goes, let's go on that example and say that yes, the new Muslim has to make ghusl. Will his ghusl be as obligatory upon him as the obligation upon the one who is junub? And everyone will say no. He goes, even if you say it's obligatory, the obligatory nature is more severe upon the junub, no doubts whatsoever. Whereas when you say upon the other guy, the new Muslim, is just about obligatory, I think so, that's our opinion, blah blah blah. There's no comparison in the usul. He goes, therefore, it is not possible. So therefore, this is Shaykh Uthaymeen's final position at the end, right there. وَعَلَيْهِ فَمَنْعُ الْكَافِرِ. So therefore, we can conclude that to prevent the non-Muslim from reciting the Quran until he makes wudu, until he makes ghusl, is weak. Because there is not a single narration, there is not an authentic one, not even a weak one, and even you can't even make analogy either. So we don't even have a weak hadith, not even an authentic hadith, and we can't even make qiyas. So how on earth are you preventing this new Muslim guy from reciting the Quran and insisting that he has to make a ghusl? So what's our conclusion point? Our conclusion point is that if someone came in here now, non-Muslim, he became Muslim, we wouldn't say to him, you have to now go make ghusl or you have to go make wudu before you recite the Quran. Okay? That's if you could recite the Quran, miskin. Well, I don't know how he's going to recite the Quran, but you know how it is. I'll tell you something, let me tell you something, okay? I'll tell you something ajib. I mean, this is a bit scary though, so don't freak out. But I met a new Muslim. I mean, this guy became Muslim, fresh new Muslim, but he was possessed by a jinn. Okay, and he was possessed by a jinn that allowed him to write fluent Arabic. He was writing fluent Arabic. I'm telling you, man. And he was writing Arabic just like Yani, you know. And I was saying to him, how is that possible? How do you write Arabic? He was in my lesson once, and he's there writing. I'm thinking, okay. So then I went to him in the break, and I had, look, it's all Arabic. I'm saying, what's happening here, bro? He goes, I was there listening, and then suddenly, you know, I'm in the zone, and suddenly I'm writing. And you know what? How he described it? He described it. I don't want to give too much away because, you know, he might even be watching Yani because, you know, he's a student, inshallah. But he said that he can actually see the words in front of him, and then he translate. He what's the word? Traces the words basically. So the words appear in front of him, and he traces them like that. And we'll look at it. It's good, man. It's good quality kind of stuff. But you know what's the freaky part? He's writing backwards because he's tracing it, isn't he? So he's tracing it backwards because he's seeing the kind of like the template stencil. So he's kind of stenciling it backwards on a piece of paper. It's a crazy word out there, bro. I'm telling you, man. It's no wonder that Pacs love to talk about jinn, because jinn are, it's crazy, bro. I'm telling you. Allah musta'an. Okay, anyway, right. So, and then what is the next? Wallah says the statement on the thingy is what? The next sentence. Now, they are allowed to pass through the mosque if there is a need. Who's they? Those who need to make ghusl. So they're in some state of impurity, some state of a problem. They need to make ghusl, but the Hanbali is saying we allow them to pass through the masjid if there is a need. But they cannot remain therein without wudu. So if they want to pass by, okay. But stay inside, you've got to do it with wudu. You've got to do it with wudu. Okay, good. So let's look at what the Shaykh says. يمر به عند الحاجة أي يحرم على من لزمه الغسل اللبث المسجد. And the reason for this, and there's evidences for this, okay? And the first one is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى حتى تعلموا ما تقولون ولا جنوبا إلا عابري سبيل حتى تغتسلوا. As Allah says in the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, verse 43, translated as, O you who believe, don't come to the prayer whilst you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying, and neither the junub, the sexually impure one, okay, unless he is the one, except the one passing through, until they make ghusl. Until they make ghusl. So the real question is, okay, يعني Shaykh says, وَلَا تَقْرُبُوهَا جُنُوبًا. So do not come close to it whilst you are junub, unless you are someone who's passing through. That's where they get the idea of the passing through. So don't come close to it unless you're passing through. The first question you'll ask, obviously, is what do you mean don't come close to it? The first part of the ayah is very clear, yes? Do not come close to the prayer, meaning don't even try and pray, don't try and blag it, okay, whilst you're drunk. Because if you're drunk, you don't know what you're saying. Alright? You don't know, you don't understand. Obviously, this is just to give you some context, this ayah, even though it's in the Quran, it's the ulama differed actually. Is its ruling abrogated or not? Of course, it's abrogated in a practical sense, because if you was to act by this Quran, this ayah as it is, then it means you could go and drink. Okay? This ayah, look at it. It says, "Oh, you who believe, do not come close to the prayer whilst you are drunk, whilst you are intoxicated." I.e., drink in other times, but not when it's prayer times. Correct?
Is the translation drunk or
intoxicated? Sukara, intoxicated. Okay, but it's referring to alcohol. Yeah. Okay. Until you know what you are saying. So even it could be possible to say drink only a little bit, so you're not fully intoxicated, and you do know what you're saying, because you can't drink quite a bit, and you know what you're still saying. So I just want you to know, of course, that this ayah is, although it's been left in the Quran, So its recitation has been left. You know, when you study ulum al-Quran, verses of Quran fall into various categories. Sometimes the ayah is left and it is recited and the ruling remains. Or the ayah is recited and the ruling has been taken out, so the actual ruling has been abrogated. Or the ruling is applicable but the recitation has been lifted, so the ayah has been taken out of the Quran. For example, the ayatul rajam, of stoning, for example, which is as Sayyidina Umar, in the hadith of Sayyidina Umar and Bukhari. This is the ayah that we used to recite in the Quran. I'm sure you've heard that before. It's a long story. So it falls into these various categories. So this is one of the second category where the recitation remains, but the ruling has been abrogated by Surah An-Nisa, which will come after, well, other verses in Surah An-Nisa and later, and Surah Al-Ma'idah, of course. This is the first part of the 3 stages of the prohibition of alcohol. First, it came gently. So you know what? If you want to drink, then drink, but don't be drinking in the prayer time. Don't come to prayer whilst you're still drunk. Then after that, then of course, much more severe. And then after that, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's the handiwork of shaitan. فَهْلَ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ. Are you not going to stop? And then of course, their companions that were still drinking, they smashed all their vessels, threw away all the alcohol into Hina. We have finished. We have abstained. So the ayah is clearly talking about the prayer. Do not come to the prayer whilst you are drunk. Neither the junub, neither the one who is junub, unless he is walking past the masjid until he makes ghusl. So the first question is, the junub can't pray anyway. Sah? Yes? The junub can't pray anyway. So what's going on? وَلَيْسَ الْمَعْنَى لَا تُصَلُّوا إِلَّا عَبْرِ السَّبِيلِ لِأَنَّ عَبْرِ السَّبِيلِ لَا يُصَلِّي. Sheikh said, he goes that it doesn't mean do not pray, because the Abir Sabil, the one who is passing through, he's not there to pray either. Okay? He's not praying because he's going through, he's walking through. So لأن عابر لا يصلي فيكون النهي عن قربان الصلاة أي النهي في مرور بأماكنها وهي المساجد. He goes, basically what the verse is saying is that the one who is junub should not be coming to the, meaning that you mustn't go past the place of the prayer. You mustn't come close to the place of the prayer. فإن عبر المسجد فلا بأس به وأما أن يمكث فيه فلا. So the verse actually is quite clear. What it's trying to say is that if you're going to walk past, no problem. But if you're junub, then don't come to the places of the prayer. This is basically what it's saying. Until you make ghusl. So the ayah is saying, if you are junub, you cannot come and stay in the masjid. The only exception for you is to pass it by. The only exception for you is to pass it by. So this is the first evidence. The second evidence, so the ayah is indicating it very clearly. The second evidence is that the masajid are the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they are places of dhikr and ibadah, and they are the resting places of the angels. And subhanallah, if we eat onions or garlic and those kind of things, then we are forbidden from staying in a masjid. Number of hadith. Don't come to the masjid whilst you are smelling of garlic and onions, because that is putting off the other people who are coming to the masjid. So فالجنوب الذي تحرم عليه الصلاة من باب أولى. He goes, this person's allowed to pray. In fact, this person is commanded to come to the masjid whilst he is, in control of what he eats and doesn't eat. So what about the one who is not allowed to pray, i.e. the junub? How can we say to him that he should come to the masjid, and the guy who eats onions, he can't come to the masjid? Yani, it's obvious. And also, he goes, especially when you think about the fact that the malaika, as the Shaykh here says, they do not go into a house in which there is a junub. Okay, they do not go into the house where someone is junub. Now I just want to say, فَإِنَّهَا تَتَأَذَّى بِمَنْعِهَا مِنْ دُخُولِ هَذَا الْمَسْجِدِ, because they get harmed, okay, by going there. I just want to say a couple of things about that. First of all, that because he's just kind of mentioning it in passing, right, and maybe kind of explaining it by meaning, the hadith which says that the angels do not enter a house in which there is a junub, someone who's impure in that way from marital relations, this hadith is weak. Okay, this hadith is weak, and there's no doubt about that. Okay, but then there's another hadith which is narrated by Imam Abu Dawood, okay, on the authority of Ammar bin Yasir, that the angels they don't come to three people: the dead body of the non-Muslim, and the one who puts this kind of certain type of perfume on, and a person who is in junub until he does wudu, and a person who is junub until he does wudu. The angels won't come close to this person. Alright? And this hadith itself, this hadith is also one which is not there is inqita'a, there is a break in the chain. Some of the scholars said this hadith is weak as well, but some said it's authentic, this one. And we should operate on the basis that this hadith itself is nowhere near the same weakness as the one about the angels in the house. So the strength of this is acceptable, insha'Allah, because of the number of scholars that made it authentic. And as Shaykh Al-Albani made it authentic, but there are others, as I said, that criticized it. His student, Shaykh Abu Ishaq Al-Huwaini, one of the muhaddithin that are alive today, he considered this hadith to be weak. I'm just saying that in basic principle, the angels do not approach a person who is junub. Okay? And just so that you know, that you don't get confused, when we say the angels do not approach a person who is junub, it doesn't mean that no angels go to him, because there has to be angels there, for the angel of death, for example, and the recording and so on. It basically means the angels that bring the barakah. The angels that bring mercy. The angels which come and they report back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this person is doing dhikr, this person is doing ibadah, this person is remembering you, etc., etc. They're the ones who don't come. So you get mega harmed by that, basically, because it's via agency of those angels that we get most of the mercy that we get. So it's obviously a serious issue. Yes, exactly.
There's a question on 9 last week about harming of angels.
Yeah.
You just mentioned it again.
Yeah, so when I say the harming of the angels, what I mean by that, obviously it's not physical harm, you can't physically harm the angel, but imagine it's like the best example I can give is when you come out of the haram and you arrive here, and what happens to your eyes and your heart when you arrive into a dirty, filthy area. It's like psychological torture. You see fahsha, you see al-khubuth, you see this kind of this everything. So you feel painful. It's painful, isn't it? Right? So it's not a physical harm. And multiply that by millions upon millions. You have the most purest of the pure. They just do nothing but worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're used to absolute purity and cleanliness and ibadah, and then they see nonsense and filth and whatever. It's not their norm. It's not what they expect. It's not what they like. So this is the way to understand it. Wallahu alam. Okay. If there is a need only, so not every single person who can walk through the masjid. Okay. First of all, you need to understand, because you're thinking, what do you mean walk past the masjid? Obviously, here our masajid are our places that you go to, so it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you don't walk past in the masjid. But if you go to the Muslim countries, you'll know, if anyone's been to the Muslim countries, you'll see that the masajid that are in the populated areas, they have many, many doors, and they're shortcuts. They're shortcuts from one end of the city to the other end of the city, or market, I should say. So genuinely, what was the country I was last in where that was the case? Actually, many. Egypt, Morocco.
East London Masjid. No, you have to go very far.
That's a really good example. East London Masjid, yeah. East London Masjid. Quick, little shimmy through there. Saves you going all around past Tesco's and all this, that, whatever. If you want to go to Tayyib, straight through. Boom, job done. That's a good point. Well done, Shaz. Has you done that before, Shaz? Yeah?
We used to use it as a shortcut.
You used to use it as a shortcut, yeah? Well, that's an awesome example, Shaz. See, when Shaz is nice and calm, he gives wicked examples, that. So, that's the case, basically. You walk through one door, whatever. And you know that the Prophet ﷺ, there's a discussion amongst the scholars, because there were many doors to the Masjid Nabawi, and the Prophet ﷺ had them all closed except the door of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Okay, and he said, I want all of these different gates to be basically closed except the gates of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And there's too much coming and going and coming and going. This is a very interesting point. So I just want you to know that when we have this concept of people going through, it's a real concept. Okay, people really genuinely did. But but the Hanbali said there has to be a need. So what kind of needs? He mentions 6 here. Okay, maybe he wants to enter from a certain door and sorry, 5, and to come out of another one so that he's not seen. He basically he wants to try and do like a little slide kind of one. So he goes in through this door, comes out a different one, so that he's not seen by anyone. So that's one of them. And or he takes a shortcut because he wants a shortcut. He just wants to cut his journey time. Number 2. Or he wants to have a quick look into the masjid to see if there's anyone if there's anyone who needs help. Because a lot of the times people would come for looking for help, and so you have a quick check in to see if there's anyone. Or the people who want sadaqah, 4th or number 3 or 4, whatever. People who need sadaqah, then they would also go in from certain doors of the masjid, and you'd go in. And 5th, for someone who wants to come and check in to see whether there's a circle of knowledge or something which is going on, then they will see, okay, I've looked in, come inside, seen that there's a need, there's a circle. I'm going to go and make ghusl, then I'm going to come back. So there's got to be an actual need. You can't just, just walk in, just chill out on whatever. Okay? And that's why Shaykh Uthaymeen, he makes a clear point. That's why I'm making a clear point. He says that the lesson to learn is that if there is no need, then even passing through the masjid whilst you are junub is something impermissible. Now, in our modern time, what's the practical reality of this? Is that if you are in a state of junub and there is an activity at the masjid, and I don't know, some kind of open day or something, or maybe you forgot something in the masjid or whatever, then you got to make sure it's a good enough reason to actually go into the masjid as you are. Otherwise, it's best to make a ghusl and be on the safe side. But if there's something that you've got no time and you'd have to jacket on the hook, and so you want to come in quickly and grab it, that's a need, and that would be permissible. You're coming in because it's everything which is opposite to staying in a masjid. Al-lubth, which we're going to come to now, is when you stay there, sit down, relax, go to sleep. Normally you hang around, okay? So any kind of passing through, inshallah, is okay. I'm not very comfortable with the idea of the teaching, for example, open day, helping out as a volunteer, etc., etc. Because you might come in the daytime, you see, and it might be in the morning, and you come and you look and you help out, you're here for a while, sit down, give them presentation, tea, biscuits, whatever, whatnot. So that's spending time. So these people should make ghusl. They should make ghusl. Okay. So Imam Ahmad himself, generally he didn't like people using the masjid for as a pathway. And I'll tell you something. Even though, and especially as the Prophet ﷺ emphasized that the masajid, when you think about the prohibition of sales and transactions and trade in the masjid, alright, the prohibition is not some super clear one from the Prophet ﷺ, other than he made it very clear that these masajid are built for dhikr and ibadah and salah. And so when people start to take liberties and use it for other things, it's like I was teaching fiqh salah in Bristol. MashaAllah, shout out to Bristol. Very nice class I had there last week. And we should have some people there online now. We were discussing the issue of masajid and what is permissible and impermissible in principle. The question is it permissible to make a multi-purpose masjid? Yeah? And is it permissible to eat and drink in the masjid? Is it permissible to sleep in the masjid? Is it permissible for the non-Muslim to come into the masjid, etc., etc.? I want to say that the answer to all of these questions, or nearly all of them, is it is haram in principle, but allowed for the need. So in principle, no, it's not allowed to make a multi-purpose masjid because it's a masjid. The only reason we're making a multi-purpose masjid is because, going back to my original point that I said at the beginning of the class, Muslims give for masjids. They don't give for youth centers. They don't give for a markaz for da'wah. They don't give for an office where someone could sit and answer the phone all day to new Muslims. They don't give for, we struggle to give the imam a proper wage. We give him like minimum wage, right? We struggle to justify that in our heads. And you would have thought that's the most easiest decision for Pax to give, because the one person that they need definitely is an imam, right? So you'd thought they would give to that person. But forget about him. We should have a mental health professional and a marriage counsellor in every single masjid. In every single masjid. Paid. Alright? Just to deal with that. They come to the scholars and they put these scenarios in front of them, and to be honest, we ain't got a dali what's happening about mental health, and this is a serious issue, it's like it's complicated stuff, it's a specialist area, requires training and so on and so forth. So khalas, if you're not going to put in every single masjid, then at least the main masajid everywhere. But people are not going to raise the money for that, are they? They're not going to raise the money. So what can we do? The best that we can do is to, on the cheaps, add little services to the existing masjid. But build another room, build a foyer, build like a balcony and whatever. I was discussing with a brother the other day that he was saying that one of the masajid has and we should remember this for when it comes to the renovation of this masjid. They have an observation deck or room for people and guests to come in and watch the salah properly. Like when we have it, we sit the gore at the back on a chair or something, yeah, and just say sit there, and they get all bogged out, everyone comes in, has a look at them, and then next person comes in, was like, Allah, standard, innit? Can you imagine being that gore on the seat? You know what I mean? All these people just bowling in, no one gives a monkeys, and everyone just Allahu Akbar and whatever. And you walk into the masjid, bit of a stink, we can handle that. We're immune to it. It's like part of the, what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, don't you, bro? Right? But when in Quran you've come into that scene, the only thing you can smell, wallah, can you imagine it? The only thing you can smell is people's socks, people's feet, all the onions, all the curry. That's probably the only thing you can smell when you walk in, because they have like a very, very, ultimately your nose is conditioned to your environment, and you can smell these things when you go in first time. So imagine then if there was like this kind of false glass or an observation deck at one side where they could be brought in, lounge, nice whatever, and watch the whole thing, speakers on, sit down and observe it. And especially what we talked about last week or week before, that we were saying that one thing that we need to massively increase on is to show people the sajda, show people the prayer, because that really reminds the people of their contract that they gave with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of them, they agreed to the same thing that we did. Okay, we all said Bala shahidna, Allah, we've given our witness, we bear testimony that you are to be worshipped alone, and they've forgotten it, and we also forgot it. But alhamdulillah, someone helped us remember, right? So the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that someone helped us remember. So it's good if they can also see something and it touches something. So look at that. All right, we need to have, because of the nature of where we are, what we're doing in a non-Muslim country, limited areas, limited funds, limited people who have got the vision to support. So we do have to have a multi-purpose masjid. And when it comes to sleeping and so on and so forth, it shouldn't happen in masjid. It's not a hotel. But then some people come in, smash knackered. We'd be delighted if he comes to the masjid and sleeps, to be honest. We'll get one extra person in the jama'ah, you know what I mean? We'd be delighted. And food and drink. Otherwise we're going to be then going to God knows where if we don't get, have little Ghana Shana in the masjid. So, we need to keep a control on that. Okay, so this is interesting part now. Okay, he does not remain in the masjid ولا يلبث فيه بغير وضوء. All right. So, but he is allowed to remain as long as he makes wudu. So this is the junub. He makes wudu and he can remain. Now listen carefully. Junub, that doesn't get rid of the state unless he does what? Ghusl. But if he makes wudu, he can stay in the masjid. So now you're learning an interesting principle. First of all, what's the evidence that that's the case? Because to purify him, he needs to make ghusl. If he does wudu, well, he didn't purify himself. He just made wudu. Would you agree? So, is there any proof for this? Number one, the companions of radiallahu anhum, they would make wudu from janaba and then they would go back and stay in the masjid. فَكَانَ الْوَاحِدْ مِنْهُمْ يَنَامْ فِي الْمَسْجِدِ. So for example, one of them would go to the sleep in the masjid, and if he had a wet dream, and that would happen, had حلم, احتلم, okay, ذهب فتوضأ ثم عاد. He would go, he would make wudu, and he would come back, and then go back to sleep or relax in the masjid. In the references, you can see an interesting discussion. You're going to find this kind of narration in the books of Athar. So first of all, we can start with that which has been narrated by Sa'id al-Mansur in his Sunan, and this is the exact wording, and by Ibn Abi Shayba in the books of purification. The specific narration is narrated on the authority of Hisham ibn Sa'ad and Zayd ibn Aslam, on the authority of Ata ibn Yasar, who said that I saw men from the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They would sit in the masjid and they were mujnibun. They were in junub. إِذَا تَوَضَّأُوا وُضُوءَ الصَّلَاةِ. but they would actually just go and make the wudu of the prayer. And they were in the masjid. They would just go make wudu of the salah, and they would remain in the masjid. Also, Hanbal ibn Ishaq and Abi Nu'aym and Hisham ibn Sa'ad and Zayd ibn Islam, he said that the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they يتحدثون في المسجد وهم على غير وضوء. They would chill in the masjid, discussing, chatting in the masjid, and they would not have wudu. وكان الرجل يكون جنبا. So this first part is just saying, if you don't have wudu, you can chill. Not junub, normal guy, yeah, but just hasn't got wudu. And there would be a person from them as well that might be junub. He goes, makes wudu, then he will go and come back into the masjid with his wudu only and carry on the discussion with them as well. Ibn Kathir said that this isnad is sahih according to the condition of Muslim. And this has also been narrated by Ibn Abi Shaybah. Actually, there are a number of narrations for this point. So this is not in dispute. The companions, this was their way. So Shaykh then says, وَهَذَا دَلِيلٌ عَلَىٰ أَنَّهُ جَائِزٌ. And this is very interesting. So this is a proof, therefore, that this is permissible for someone, even though he is junub, to remain in the masjid with wudu. Because لأن ما فعل في أحده صلى الله عليه وسلم ولم ينكر. And anything that happened during his time, the Messenger's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he did not make inkar. Huh? Yeah, he didn't like prohibit it, okay, didn't speak out against it, then it is permissible if it is from the normative matters, and it will be rewarded if it is from the matters of deen. Because the matters are of two types, isn't it? Either you do something wanting reward, or you do something which you don't expecting anything. So here, Shaykh Uthaymeen mentions this point because they were just chilling, they were just talking. And that's not an act of ibadah. And so if they do something at the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's not an act of ibadah, then the rule is that means it is permissible. If they do an act of ibadah, what's an ibadah? Meaning they do anything which they're expecting a reward from Allah for it, and it happens at the time of the Messenger ﷺ, and he doesn't say anything, then that means that act not only is an act of ibadah, but they get rewarded for it. Because, as we said before, it is obligatory upon the Prophet ﷺ to speak out against something which is haram. And so when he doesn't do it, then that's an implicit approval that is something which is allowed. Okay? So this is the first evidence. The companions used to do it. And because the Prophet ﷺ allowed them, then this is a clear proof. The second evidence is very interesting. It is because wudu yukhaffifu al-janaba. Wudu lightens the state of sexual impurity. It lightens it. This, the evidence for this is the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was asked about a man who had to make ghusl. Okay? Should he go to sleep? Ayanam wa huwa junub? Is he allowed to go to sleep whilst he's still junub? So he needs to make ghusl. He's in a state of janaba. Does he have to make ghusl before he goes to sleep? The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا تَوَضَّأَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَرْكُدْ وَهُوَ جُنُبٌ. As long as someone makes wudu, then he can go to sleep even if he is junub. As long as one of you makes wudu, then he can go to sleep even if he is junub. This hadith narrated by Bukhari in the chapter of Al-Ghusl, the book of Al-Ghusl, the chapter, the sleep of the one who is junub. And Imam Muslim narrated this in Kitab al-Hayd, which is pretty cool. Okay? Alright. And then the third evidence, Shaykh Uthaymeen says at the top of page 353, he goes that wudu is actually one of the two purifiers. Compared to ghusl, yeah? One of the two purifiers. وَلَوْلَا الْجَنَابَ لَكَانَ رَافِعًا الْحَدَثْ رَفْعًا كُلِّيًّا فَحِينَئِذٍ يَكُونُ مُخَفِّفًا لِلْجَنَابَ. He goes, if there was no janaba, he just made wudu, it would have lifted completely any spiritual impurity. Yes? It has an intrinsic power. And so therefore now at the state of janaba, you're not at zero. Because you have already lifted a state of hadath. But now there's extra required to lift the state of janaba. Meaning, it's like an emphasis of second point. Meaning that, well, not the second point. It's just basically showing that a person who is junub and does something is not like the person who is junub and makes wudu. He's obviously cleaner. Even though he's not allowed to pray, not allowed to recite Quran, not allowed. Although I have to say to you that in some of the Hanbali positions, that if he does make wudu, it is, some of them said that he's allowed to recite Quran and do a couple of things. But that's getting controversial, let's not get into that. But let's at least just stick to this issue here, that a person who is in junub, is good he makes wudu, because he will be in a state where he is lighter, okay, lighter than that. Alright, next section, Nashaz, the English text. So now this is the beginning of the sunan. It is a recommended, let's read down the Arabic, وَمَنْ غَسَّلَ مَيْتًا, and this is also possible to say مَيِّتًا, okay, فَمَيْتًا وَمَيِّتًا, وَمَنْ غَسَّلَ مَيِّتًا أَوْ أَفَاقَ مِنْ جُنُونٍ أَوْ إِغْمَاءٍ بِلَا حِلْمٍ سُنَّ لَهُ الْغُسُلِ. It is a recommended sunnah to make ghusl if one washes a dead body, غَسَّلَ مَيْتًا or مَيِّتًا. Number 2, one regains their intellect after losing their sanity, أو أفاق من جنون, okay, regains their intellect. You know what, we need to work with that in that translation. Okay, let's try and perfect that in this class. One regains their intellect after losing their sanity, أو إغماء, one regains their consciousness, بلا حلم, and they haven't had a wet dream during that period. This is referring to the period of junun and ighma, by the way, okay? Then that is when it is a sunnah to make ghusl. If they have a wet dream, then of course it's an obligation. That's the point there. Okay, if they have a wet dream, then they have to. But as long as they don't have a wet dream, then it is sunnah. Basically meaning a person could faint and he doesn't have to make a ghusl. But if he does, it's better. And I just want to make it clear, and we'll come to this obviously next week, there is a difference there that's being made between afaq min junun and ighma. Junun is loss of intellect. Okay, Junoon is loss of intellect, and ighma, yani a gham. You know gham? In Urdu, what does gham mean? Sorrow. Don't you have nothing for a cloud like gham? No? Oh, but that hasn't got a daddy about Urdu, yara. Come on, man.
It's the same word,
huh? Yeah, huh? Sad, yeah, sad. I don't know, I'm just wondering whether in Urdu the sadness came because something descends upon the mind and makes it sad. Because actually ighma means that the mind has been kind of covered. Not covered, yani, it's like it loses itself. Yani, what I want to say is fainting is ighma. And when I think of someone who faints, it's a light temporal loss of consciousness. Whereas junoon is like a proper loss of consciousness. Is that possible to make that distinction? Huh? No, not coma. Not coma. Shaykh Uthaymeen himself says, for example, epilepsy, an epileptic fit. Yep. But that's not good enough, because that's him. He's using his own ijtihad. Of course, he's a scholar. We should respect that. But that's himself making his own statement. He goes, such as epilepsy. I want to try and understand what junoon is from the original sense. So we can see, actually there's no evidence for junoon. As far as I know, and Allah knows best, in the Quran and Sunnah, there's no, we're going to come to this discussion later obviously, but there's no evidence to show that when you lose your intellect, you have to make ghusl, or a sunnah to make ghusl. The evidence for junoon, for losing your mind completely, is based upon the evidence for ighma, for fainting. And the evidence for fainting is very well known. All of you know the evidence for that. That was because in Sahih Bukhari and all the hadith collections, the Prophet ﷺ, in his final days and final moments, when he was too weak to go out to lead the prayer, and he kept waking up and he kept fainting. So he kept waking up and fainting. Then he would wake up and then he would faint. He would say, the prayer, what's happening about the prayer, and I'm about to, I want to go. So the first time actually when he woke up, all right, from fainting, the bathtub is there, and he did ghusl, ightasal. Okay, so he made ghusl because of the fainting. Then he woke up again, and as he tried to, then he fainted because he had a very, very heavy fever, and he kept making it. He was in pain. I'm guessing that it's more likely to faint from the pain than the fever, right?
Fever?
This is the one that makes you faint?
Yeah.
More than the pain? Pain is shock, isn't it?
Pain is shock, but the temperature and the fever will pass you out, and then convulsions, isn't it?
Well, we have no evidence of any convulsions. No evidence of any convulsions in the Prophet ﷺ. But I mean, you've got this combination of intense pain, intense fever, and nothing to bring it down. He was not taking any painkillers, no antipyretics, no anti-inflammatories, just water being dabbed on his forehead, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he's obviously losing consciousness, but it's not what you would call junoon. Alright? But he was fainting. And he made ghusl. So that's why the scholars said that's why it's an obligation. And that's why it's sunnah to do so. And if you have to, and if you should do so for fainting, then what about then when you properly lose it? Do you get it now? That's the evidence for it. It's a qiyas. But I'm just trying to understand the difference between fainting and junoon.
Can I just ask, when you say fainting, are you talking about someone faints and they don't remember what happened? Or someone who faints but knew something was going to happen?
Yeah, it is more the second. In fact, ighma is, you know, gham, which is ighma from. Gham is like, we call a gham, yani lightheadedness, where you don't know what's happening.
There is no, once you lose your consciousness, you lose your intellect. It's one of the other. What you're looking at now is maybe something like,
where's he gone, man? What should the one lesson in our entire lives we need Shazad, yeah? The guy
or someone has a loss of intellect. He could be still conscious, but he's lost his intellect, as in his capacity.
No. So
if you lose consciousness, you lose the intellect.
When you lose consciousness,
When you lose consciousness, there's no way that you have intellect because you're out cold.
When you lose consciousness, you don't remember.
You can be conscious and then
you don't remember anything.
Yeah, but you can be conscious and you lose your intellect if you have a mental illness. Some people can't remember what they did, or they have black moments, or they,
I'm going to research that. That's good.
There is a debate about consciousness, like, if you are conscious, you can remember something as well at the same time. Because recently the results of that debate with the doctor in Australia, they were proving that when you're conscious, you can remember something. Like they have some cases which they prove, like from the dentures, you remember it's you see that trolley, you remember that. So you can remember something.
But that doesn't mean your capacity is there. Your intellect means that you can actually do something.
From the translation to Junoon, it sounds more like it's to do with like someone going crazy rather than anything to do with consciousness.
Yeah. And that's how I translated it. And now I'm starting to. So if I said Shaykh Uthaymeen, he says, okay, I don't know why we just. I mean, I translated it like that because that's what it seems to me that Shaykh Uthaymeen is saying. Because he says, وَالْجُنُونَ زَوَالَ الْأَقْلِ, يعني the intellect goes, such as epilepsy. Now in epilepsy, the aql doesn't go. Does it go?
Yeah, in petit mal.
The aql goes, or does he faint?
You have two types, isn't it?
Lose control and thingy, grand mal boom.
No.
I love that word, grand mal.
Sheikh, can you just clarify? Are you talking about like for if you faint, there's medical causes, neurological, cardiac?
Also, petit mal is the person can be conscious, but they have the space system. Yeah, so he's awake. He has petit mal. He has blackout. He doesn't know what's going on, and then suddenly he's back again. He goes, okay, what happened?
Yes.
Are you talking about consciousness as in awareness, or are you talking about control? Because you can have
So consciousness is definitely ighma, meaning if a person faints, then by definition they've lost consciousness. The debate is over the point 2 about this. I think the petit mal then obviously as opposed to grand is that he's still there. Yeah, and he just doesn't know what's going on, and he's lost it. Well, not. I mean, I've written losing their sanity, as I don't know if that's a bit strong or not, because it's aql, zawal al aql. Zawal means the removal of aql, meaning thingy. Yeah.
When you start saying insanity, you're talking about psychological.
Yeah. So take insanity out. Aql is what? Intellect.
Awareness.
We call it intellect. We call aql intellect. But what is actually aql? It's like our ability to think. It's awareness. This word intellect, I think, is a poor kind of use. Yeah, aql is, he's able to think, able to make decisions.
One regains their awareness after losing their intellect.
Again, intellect. Does that what you understand? Is that when you say the word intellect?
I don't think santi is a good word.
Okay, science doesn't look like good.
I think awareness is the word.
Awareness.
It's like aql is what differentiates us from animals, right?
Yes.
What differentiates
But animals are aware.
No, but it's like a conscious awareness.
It's something else. The ability to think, but then animals can think.
It's
So
the
what's
other way
aql?
around. It's the other way around. The insan has intellect. The animals have awareness but no intellect. Well, they have a certain amount of intellect, but it depends.
Yeah, they have intellect as well.
No, the word aql is the ability to make rational judgments, thought process, decisions, which are intelligent in nature.
Intellect.
Zawal, the zawal, yani control, as you said, losing control. I need to look at. I you know what? Let me spend some time looking on that. I mean, we've got some time because we've got to focus on washing a dead body first. Yep. No. Like I said, let me look into that a bit more. We weren't going to get to that anyway. I don't know why I just broke my rules and went straight into that instead. So let's talk about the washing of the dead person. It's very interesting. Okay. Come on and give me the. I'm dying now. Just give me the score, someone. Yeah. Zafar, don't lag it. I know Zafar's watching it. Uthman definitely is. Don't try and make it. I just come from Saudi. I don't check the score. To who? Oh, it's all over, yeah. Not good, bro. Bro, this is wrong. No, it's not. We always support the English teams, bro, in Champions League. Yeah.
You never sat with the City fans.
I sit with City fans day and night, bro. I detest City fans, but on Champions League nights, bro, we need English teams in there, yeah. It's for the goodness of our game. Okay, never mind. Khair. So, وَمَنْ غَسَّلَ مَيِّتًا هذا شو. So this is the first. Sheikh says this is the first of the mustahab washings. Yeah, the recommended ones. All right. Okay. What's the evidence for this one? Well, the evidence for this is a fascinating hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ghassala mayyitan falyaghtasil, wa man hamanahu falyatawadda." The one who washes the dead body, then let him make ghusl, and the one who carries the dead body, then let him make wudu. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who washes a dead person, then let him make ghusl, and the one who carries dead body, then let him make wudu. Now, let's talk about this. First of all, let's actually carry on with what Shaykh Uthaymeen says, because I'll just lose my head on this. I love this hadith. Okay, the ulama said that this hadith has a command. Yep, very straightforward. فَلْيَغْتَصِلْ is let him make wudu. I'm saying that in English, let him. When I say let him make wudu, do you see that as a command in the English language? Soft, isn't it? If someone says, if I'm saying to you, like, if I want next man to wash himself after he washes a dead person, I could say, listen, tell him, if you wash the dead person, you must make ghusl. Then there's no doubt, is there? Because it's a quotation. So tell him, if you wash this, you must do that. Or I can respond to the question and speak about him in the third person. So, Sheikh, what happens about this person here? Whoever washes dead person, then let him make ghusl. In English, it sounds weaker, doesn't it? Do you understand that when you say let him make ghusl in the English language?
Depends who you're saying it.
Not fully. It's not fully there.
I don't think it's fully there.
He should.
I'll tell you why, because in the Arabic language, even they have their own discussion that it's coming through a present verb. فَلْيَغْتَصِلْ. Okay, it's like understood to be a command. It's not an obvious command. It's not in English, I think it's a lot more clearer. Even in Arabic, it's not very, very clear. But anyway, the point is that this hadith has a command. And the basic premise of a command is obligation. Yet though, لكن لما كان فيه شيء من الضعف لم ينطهد الإلزام به وهذا مبني على قاعدة وهي أن النهي إذا كان في حديث ضعيف لا يكون التحريم. This is a Ajib statement. He says, there's no doubt that there is a command in this hadith which would normally mean obligation. However, there is a very important principle. This hadith is weak, or it has some weakness in it at least. And a command in a weak hadith or a hadith with weakness will not mean haram. Meaning that normally if a hadith is weak and it says to you don't do this, then it's not recommended to do this because of the weakness of the hadith. It won't mean it's haram. If the hadith was authentic, then you would understand it in its full power. Don't do this, meaning it's haram if you do it. But because the hadith is weak, then the don't do this, we're going to kind of downgrade the haram to makruh, like you shouldn't be done. وَالْأَمْرُ إِذَا كَانَ فِي حَدِيث ضَعِيف لَا يَكُونِ الْوُجُوبِ. And therefore likewise a command to do something. Do this in a hadith sahih means obligation. But do this in a hadith which is weak will mean that it's not obligatory. لأن الإلزام بالمنع أو الفعل يحتاج إلى دليل تبرأ. Because a command to obligate something or to make something haram requires a very clear evidence to take away the basic state of affairs. Very, very clear evidence. And he goes that this qa'idah, this rule, this maxim was indicated by Ibn Muflih, who is a Hanbali scholar by the way, in his book An-Nukat al-Muharrar fi bab mawqif al-Imam al-Ma'mum. And he's very actually, he himself knows, that's the first time so far in these 3 years that we've studied that Shaykh Uthaymeen has made he knows himself that he's made a statement which is not very popular and not very clear. Not very clear, but it's not like a very obvious statement. He's going out on a limb, which is why he's felt the need. You can read this clearly. You can see his thought process. He's felt the need that I've got to refer this to someone higher. I don't have the confidence to just say, listen, if the hadith is weak and it says do this, then it doesn't mean obligation. That's a big statement to make. So he wants to relegate the kind of authority to someone else. So he says this principle was first mentioned by Ibn Muflih in this book over there, in this chapter. ومراده ما لم يكن الضعف شديد بل محتملا للصحة فيكون فعل المأمور وترك المنهي من باب الاحتياط والاحتياط لا يوجب الفعل أو الترك. He goes that when the hadith has some kind of weakness, then we're now moving into the area of caution. So you can't obligate something or you can't prohibit something based upon being cautious. You just have to be cautious. And this is his point. Anyway, so this is the first evidence. This is the first evidence for the people who obligate, what were we talking about again? Who say it's sunnah to make ghusl. This is the first evidence they said it. Okay. The second evidence أنه ورد عن أبي هريرة أنه أمر غاسل الميت بالغسل. It has been narrated in the books of Athar that Abu Hurairah, he ordered the one who washed a dead body to make ghusl. Okay. وهذا القول الذي مشى عليه المؤلف هو القول الوسط والأقرب. He goes, as far as I'm concerned, the statement of this author, meaning Imam al-Hajjawi alayhi rahmatullah, he goes, this position is balanced and the closest to the truth. That it's not obligatory, but rather it is recommended. Notice here that the Imam, he said it's recommended, but the hadith that has been used for the evidence says that he must make the ghusl. Don't forget that, okay? Now, why is that? Because some of the scholars said, وَقَالَ بَعْضَ أَهْلُ الْعِلْمِ إِنَّهُ يَجِبْ أَنْ يَغْتَسِلْ. They said he must. Some of the scholars said he must make ghusl. And why is that? They did that based upon the two hadith that we just mentioned. The first one, which said that whoever washes the dead person, then let him make ghusl. And second, Abu Hurairah, he specifically commanded the one who had just washed the dead body to make ghusl. And he said that the asl, when you say the basic principle, when you say you must wash, is that it's obligatory. There were other scholars, however, who said no, it is not required. It's not obligatory for him to make ghusl, and neither is it sunnah either. And what was their evidence to say none of it? First of all, they said the hadith of Abu Hurairah is weak, the one that we just mentioned. Okay, that this hadith is weak. They say Imam Ahmed, in fact, he said very famously, not just Imam Ahmed, but his very close friend Ali ibn Madini, the teacher of Imam Bukhari, Muhaddith, the best of them. He said, لا يثبت في هذا الباب شيء. There is nothing in this area that has been authentically narrated from the Prophet ﷺ. There's nothing established. There's nothing authentic established in this area. What's the area? The washing of oneself after you wash a dead person. Nothing authentic in this chapter. وَإِذَا لَمْ يَثْبُتْ فَدَعْوَ الْمَشْرُوعِيَّةِ تَحْتَاجُ إلى دليل ولا دليل. He goes, if there's nothing established, then how can the act be legislated? And the second point and second evidence is that the mu'min is طاهر حيٍّ وميتا. He is pure when he is alive, and he's also pure when he is dead. So if it is not, فإذا كان لا يسن الغسل من تغسل الحي فتغسل الميت من باب أولى. He said, so if you were to wash a person, yani if I was to wash his arm when he's alive, and it's not sunnah for me to make ghusl, is it? If I was to wash his arm, so why would it yani be required for me to do so when he is dead? When he is dead. I just want to just now come back and give you some facts about this hadith, okay? And then we close. This hadith has been narrated back on page 353 by Imam Ahmad and Abu Dawood and At-Tirmidhi. Actually, by all of the ulama, I remember this hadith has been narrated except by Ibn Majah. It's not been narrated by Ibn... Sorry, actually, it has been narrated. I think maybe this is a mistake. Maybe An-Nasa'i did not see any. They said Al-Khamsa illa Ibn Majah. But anyway, it says Ibn Majah. Anyway, it's been narrated by a number of the authors of the Sunan. Imam Ahmad and Imam Abu Hatim al-Razi and Al-Bukhari. Reason that these names have been mentioned? Because these are the Imams of Naqd. Remember we discussed long time ago that there's a difference between the Muhaddithin and Nuqad. Naqid, Nuqad. Yani the highest level of scholarship in hadith. Every Naqid is a Muhaddith. Every Muhaddith wishes he was a Naqid. Okay? Do you understand? We're talking like the very highest, the one that they're able to just look at a person or look at hadith and say weak, without even realizing or seeing anything, because they have a supreme skill. The muhaddith is the one who gathers hadith together, memorized 100,000, maybe knows them, that's a muhaddith. But the naqid is the one who's able to literally see and make hadith weak and da'if because they are using them so much. So Ahmad, Abu Hatim al-Razi, Al-Bukhari, I will add from my own list, Bayhaqi, Ad-Darqutni and Ibn al-Madini, Ali ibn al-Madini, they said that to consider this to be a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is a mistake. And raf'uhu khata, to make it marfu', to make it a statement of the Prophet ﷺ is khata. This is not the Prophet ﷺ's statement. وَالصَّوَابْ أَنَّهُ مَوْقُوفٌ عَلَى أَبِي هُرَيْرَةَ. Actually, this is the statement of Abu Hurairah, therefore it is mawquf. This is not a prophetic hadith. Then, on the other side, Ibn al-Qayyim said that this hadith has 11 ways of narration. Turuq, 11. And therefore he said, وَهَذِهِ الطُّرُقْ تَدُلُّ عَلَى أَنَّ الْحَدِيث مَحْفُوظ. He goes, these 11 narrations prove that this hadith is preserved. This is a well-known and has to be an accepted hadith. It was considered authentic by, in the classic times, Ibn al-Qattan, mid-times by Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi, and modern times, Shaykh al-Albani considered this hadith to be sahih. Ibn Taymiyyah said that its chain is according to the conditions of the shart of Muslim, conditions of Muslim. Hafidh ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he concludes the matter. He goes, وَفِي الْجُمْلَةِ, he goes, in summary, وَهُوَ بِكَثْرَةِ طُرُقِهِ أَسْوَأُ الْأَحْوَالِهِ أَن يَكُونَ حَسَنًا. He goes, when you consider all of the chains that it has, the worst that this hadith can be is that it is Hasan. The worst that it can be is that it is Hasan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I want you to know, okay, why is this hadith so famous? Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he put this hadith into the category of those hadith that the people of knowledge did not act by. That's a lovely statement, to be honest. Ibn Rajab put this hadith into the very small and rare category of those hadith which could be authentic, might not be, but definitely the ulama did not act by it. This hadith, this statement is so full of knowledge, it will blow your mind, you know that, okay? Because it's saying so many things. That you think it might be authentic, maybe not too sure, lots of difference of opinion. But I tell you what, we didn't see our scholars act by it. We didn't see their scholars act by it. We didn't see the people enforce the obligatory nature either, etc., etc., etc. We saw too many companions, not do it. We didn't see any of our scholars do it. Therefore, insist upon the obligatory nature of washing themselves, okay? And so therefore, it can be said that the majority of the scholars, they said that it is only recommended. Even though the hadith itself says it is obligatory, but they understood it to be recommended only. Similar to what Shaykh Uthaymeen said, okay? That it seems like an obligation, but it's actually not. You know who said that? The Hanafi school, the Maliki school, the Shafi'i school, the Hanbali school. the Lajnatul Fatwa, the Permanent Council for Fatwa in our modern times, and so on and so forth. From the ulama, Ibn Abbas radiallahu an, Aisha radiallahu anha, Hassan al-Basri alayhi rahmatullah, Ibrahim al-Nakhai, Imam Ahmad, I said that, Ishaq ibn Rahaway, Ibn Qudama, all of these scholars consider this to be a recommended matter only. There's a narration, if you study Ahkam al-Janaiz, Shaykh Albani has a very nice book actually, The Rulings Concerning Janaza. When he deals with this hadith, whatever his opinion whether the hadith is authentic or not, he himself said that even though I think this hadith is authentic, the correct position is that it is mustahab. It is recommended only to wash oneself if after you've washed the dead body. Which for me is a great statement because he's not known for his fiqh, alayhi rahmatullah, and this is a big statement of fiqh. Shows that he had some fiqh, because normally, he would say hadith is sahih, therefore obligation. But he recognizes hadith is sahih, but I'm not going to say obligation, I'm going to say mustahab, because that's what everyone else used to say. And the reason he said that is because there's another hadith which is narrated, which is very interesting, which he himself narrates. And this hadith is what? He said that the Prophet ﷺ said, ليس عليكم في غسل ميتكم غسل إذا غسلتموه فإن ميتكم ليس بنجس فحسبكم أن تغسلوا أيديكم. This is very interesting. Hadith narrated by Hakim and Al-Bayhaqi. He considered this hadith to be actually a statement of Abdullah ibn Abbas, but he considers it impossible for Ibn Abbas to make this by himself. So even though he said it, he must have been told by the Prophet ﷺ, what we call hadith, يعني حكمه مرفوع, that its ruling is that as if it was said by the Prophet ﷺ, even though it was only said by him. Translation of the hadith, that once you wash a dead body, you if you wash the dead body, you do not need to make ghusl, because your deceased is not najis. It is sufficient for you just to wash your hands. I repeat this hadith. Prophet ﷺ said that you do not need to make ghusl if you wash the dead body, because your deceased is not najis. فَحَسْبُكُمْ أَن تَغْسُلُوا أَيْدِيَكُمْ. It is sufficient for you to wash your hands. And there's another narration from Abdullah ibn Umar, which is narrated by Imam Daraqutni, and it has an authentic chain, which he said, كُنَّا نغسل الميت فمنا من يغتسل ومنا من لا يغتسل. This is the killer statement, job done. This is the reason why the scholars said. Ibn Umar said that we used to wash the dead person. Some of us would make ghusl, others wouldn't. Some of us would make ghusl, others wouldn't. That's a clear statement, knockout. That therefore this is an issue of istihbab, yani recommendation, not obligation. And that's why it's a very interesting hadith, good study. Okay, and these two hadith then seal the deal on it as well. So that's nice to see a hadith which says something very clearly, yet the scholars take a different ruling because of other. This is a classic example of usul, yani of fiqh. That the hadith says one thing, but supporting evidences bring the ruling down. The hadith is obligation, but other evidences suggest that the statement and the language was not to indicate obligation, but it was to indicate recommendation only. And Allah knows best. I think it's a good point. That we'll close with that, inshallah. Next week we'll pick up with this whole Junoon debate. A couple of points as well about there's a few other things there as well, but yeah, that's fine. Okay. You see, I'm going to start doing this now because you can't trust anyone to tell you. Just going to do that dog-eared behavior. All right, alhamdulillah. All right, any questions online? Don't skank them, Shaz. Okay, they get angry afterwards and say that they skanked our questions.
I never skanked any questions.
Really, Shazad said he never skanked any. So they never skanked it. Yes. Yes.
Before in our discussion we said that the woman who's on menstruation is not like the junub. That was in our discussion.
Yes.
So is that where we get the ruling that people, the opinion that
we're allowed to stay? No, because those who prohibit the menstruating woman from staying in the masjid have far more stronger individual evidences to prevent her from staying in the masjid. Actual ahadith which are direct. And I mentioned, I think, one or two of them in the footnotes, I think, last week or the week before or something like that. So no, the actual prohibition upon the woman staying in the masjid in menstruation is more direct. not using this evidence. I see exactly what you're trying to say, but no. We allow the woman to stay in the masjid in a very, very fatwa point of view, not a fiqh one. From fiqh, it's difficult to you will not find any classical scholar, well, very rarely go down that line that they allow the menstruating woman to stay in the masjid. Even modern times is seen as a controversial opinion. Meaning it's fatwa. It's fatwa based upon circumstances and the need of the woman and what would happen to the sisters if this, that happened, blah, blah, blah. And the fact that it's a non-Muslim country, the fact is that, there's so few, there's such a danger, what would happen to the girl if she was just, left adrift every month, 7 days, 8 days or whatever. So it's a fatwa position, not a fiqh one. From a fiqh one, it's extremely difficult to justify a woman to stay in the masjid.
So if it's based on fatwa, then do any conditions of fiqh, how do they apply? Like, for example, where it says, but if they...
Because the rules apply because we know that we are going against the grain. So whatever we can keep within the grain, we are going to. Whatever kind of whatever little kind of wins we can have in the fatwa, we will have. That's the idea there. Shaz, yeah.
No, nothing.
MashaAllah. Yeah, go on.
Would sleepwalking require?
So I'm going to cover that actually. Sleepwalking next week. Sleepwalking is first of all not required, because even if it does, sleepwalking comes under our text. We're talking about what is recommended to do so, not a must, meaning it's good. But if we were to take this literally, okay, we have to then define sleep as well. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Because when you say sleepwalking, then that means sleep. So if it's purely loss of consciousness, then that means it's recommended to make ghusl every time you wake up, which is going to be a mission. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's best that I would be more accurate next week, inshallah. Yeah.
So quick fire question just to establish the class position. So you're obligated. So whoever needs to make ghusl can't touch the Quran. Is a non-Muslim obligated to make ghusl?
A non-Muslim is not obligated to make ghusl. It's best if you can make him do so, but not obligated. No evidence.
And a new Muslim?
Same, because the non-Muslim and the new Muslim is basically being put in the same category here. The issue is the difference of the shahada. Non-Muslim is one who's intending to, just about to. New Muslim is the one who's just did it. We kind of discussed that in our example of the story. Remember last week we said that he actually went and he did it before he became Muslim. That's why some said that he doesn't have to make ghusl after he becomes Muslim. I'm saying that practically for the same purposes, it's a lot more difficult to make a non-Muslim whilst before shahada make ghusl is very difficult, because he's not under the law of sharia at all. So why would you make him do it? So the focus is upon the new Muslim after he takes shahada. The only reason that we introduce into the discussion at all this statement of non-Muslim is because we think, he's with us and we're controlling the scenario.
But can he touch the Quran or not?
Can he touch the Quran? He can touch the Quran if he has a good opinion, but he's non-Muslim, isn't he? Do you understand what I'm saying? If he's a non-Muslim, okay. So let me just tell you about the non-Muslim and the Quran. The non-Muslim and the Quran is that first of all, non-Muslim is not under the rulings of Sharia, of purity, etc. about the Quran. Okay? So he's not under the same rulings. However, the Prophet ﷺ clearly and authentically stated, do not take the Quran to the lands of the enemy. Okay? This hadith is sahih and very, very clear. Now the lands of the enemy has been translated as Bilad al-Kufar and Bilad al-Udu and so and so. And I can't remember the other narrations. I forget now the exact wording. I need to go back and check. Okay? But the illah is clear. The reasoning is clear. That they will abuse the book. They will insult the book. They will defile the book. And they will do all kinds of things to basically freak you out. So therefore, let them capture you, let them torture you, but don't let them mentally destroy you by doing something to the Mus'haf in front of you. This is the idea. So going by this, the modern position of ulama, and this is certainly my own position, is that even though the hadith says that, it is permissible to take the Mus'haf to the lands of the non-Muslims if we believe that we are in control of it and the non-Muslims will respect it, etc., which they largely do. So the idea is that if you believe that the non-Muslim himself is using it to get, you know, to learn and study or to read and so on and so forth, then there is no clear evidence to prohibit him from touching it. However, of course it's safer because of the khilaf on the issue when he is Muslim. Because of difference of opinion, it's best that you give them only their translation. But I will not obligate it, because I'm fully aware of the power when giving da'wah of giving someone one of those cheap paperbacks, which is just English text, versus something which is hardback, which is Arabic, and it kind of leaves an impression, and it means that you're taking it seriously. But that's a double-edged sword as well. You know, if a non-Muslim sees lots of Arabic, it can be a bit off-putting as well. I'm going into a foreign kind of religion. It's a bit kind of otherworldly. It's all a bit kind of mysticky, kind of, you know. Whereas if he just sees English, pure English, maybe he feels more comfortable. Yeah, and it's a political point, that. I don't, you know. Allah, yeah.
So if a woman has finished her menses but hasn't made it back home to make ghusl and there is a class in the mosque, will the ruling of making wudu and staying for the class apply to her?
No. If she makes wudu, it definitely, anyone who makes wudu, even the one in menstruation, even the one in junub, even in anyone, will lighten their state. We believe that. Anyone. Okay? But she is allowed to come to the masjid according to the normal conditions that I mentioned. She's allowed, in my opinion, to come to masjid.
Making wudu after carrying a dead person, does that mean carrying the coffin or the body itself?
It means carrying the coffin. Because the ulama, they differed. I remember reading the sharh of Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad, hafidhahullah, in his commentary to the Sunan of Abu Dawood, talking about this hadith, and they were discussing what's the illah. Is the illah, the sharia reason for this ghusl or this wudu, because of actual things that they can pick up from the dead body? So when they're washing it, is the reason the Prophet ﷺ said this because of something you can pick up from the dead body or not? Because you're going to be using cloth and stuff, so what's the issue there? And Shaykh Abdul Muhsin, he said that the illah is unknown. It's purely a worship matter. It's not something we can rationalize. And I'm thinking about that, and maybe that's the easy way out. It is the easy way out, just to say it's not something we can't rationalize and it should be done. And I think I prefer that, because the more I think about it, is it really? I don't know. So the answer to this is, what was the question again? What I'm talking about. I don't even know what happens when I start talking.
Coffin or the body itself.
So therefore, I believe that it doesn't have to be, because if the person's indicating maybe it's the actual physical contact with the body and so on and so forth, and I would support that if there was some kind of illah that could be clear. But the illah is not clear, therefore I would apply it to the carrying of the body as well.
Last question.
Coffin as well.
Last question.
You enjoyed it, didn't you? You enjoyed saying that, didn't you, Shaz? Go on.
I did, yeah. That means it here as well. Will Pure Pesa be available online for people outside the UK?
Pure Pesa at the moment won't be online, but make lots of dua. We're looking at a massive project this year to try and do that online thing. Londoners, whoever is there, make sure you're on time on Friday. It is virtually sold out, because I've seen the attendance figures. I think there's like about a few places left. And in 2 hours the price goes up as well, so it'll be a pack and make sure you get it cheap. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك اللهم واتوب اليك والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.